Welcome back for another episode of Market Snapshot. This time we'll be breaking down all of August numbers. And if you love it, definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button because we'll be back every month with more information to help you make better decisions about buying and selling real estate. So Ruben, what are we going to talk about this month?
First off, the NAR figures that were released regarding August home sales. We're going to go through those and get a feel for where the housing market's at. And then we're going to jump into what the Fed had to say in September regarding interest rates and their view of the economy going forward.
So regarding those NAR numbers, what was the most impactful information you got out of the August release?
So I think probably the most surprising thing was that home prices returned to some pretty robust growth. We saw almost 4% year over year. Inventory keeps falling. We saw the total number of homes for sale at the end of August down 14%.
Wow.
Year over year. So inventory is tight, right? And that's starting to put pressure back on prices.
And if you're not familiar with the numbers of where we typically are, you're like, oh, we're down, what'd you say, 14% in inventory? It doesn't sound like a lot, but Ruben, when we're around 1 million homes for sale in the US, is that a low or a high number?
It's extremely low, but it just shows you that like inventory is dropping essentially almost as fast as sales is, which is a little bit crazy. But part of that is just that we're in like what's lending a lot of kind of like stability to the housing market right now that's keeping inventory flooding on is that, we talked about it last month in that, something like 70% of home buyers have at least 50% equity. So they're not in a position where they feel like they're not going underwater. They don't have to sell. And, we're going to talk about later when we talk about Fed stuff. The unemployment numbers are really good and the economy seems to be doing fairly well. People are pretty confident they're still going to have their jobs next year. So that keeps people just kind of in a wait and see mode a lot of times, kind of sitting on the fence.
So Ruben, a lot of information came out from the Fed. What should we know?
So let's start by just looking at this like quick clip about what the chairperson had to say about the economy so far this year.
Today, we decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Looking ahead, we're in a position to proceed carefully in determining the extent of additional policy firming that may be appropriate. Our decisions will be based on our ongoing assessments of the incoming data and the evolving outlook and risks.
Essentially, what they decided to do was to stop raising interest rates for now. They said that the data they've been seeing is positive, but it's not enough for them to say we're done, but that we're going to wait and see at least for a couple more months when they meet again in November.
And so the thing that you talked to me about before this, Ruben, that I found interesting was that the Fed, even though it's better, they're still giving some predictions around what the GDP is going to be next year, which also leads us down a path of the economy is maybe not going to do a whole lot next year.
Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. And so far this year, growth in real GDP has come in above expectations. Recent readings on consumer spending have been particularly robust. In our Summary of Economic Projections, or SEP, committee participants revised up their assessments of real GDP growth, with the median for this year now at 2.1%. Participants expect growth to cool, with the median projection falling to 1.5% next year.
So there we just heard him say that, the economy was on a solid pace, which means that, GDP is probably exceeding what they thought it was going to do. They actually did adjust their forecast for GDP for this year by quite a bit. Also, interestingly, we heard him use the term robust when he talked about consumer spending. Like, what does robust mean? And what that really means is he's saying that like it's something we thought we were going to push down more and it didn't budge, right? So consumer spending's good, but he didn't say good. He said robust because he's trying to imply that like it's sort of being stubborn in a sense. They've increased interest rates, but that metric is still sort of like just humming along despite the fact that they're trying to like push it down. And then on top of that, he actually mentioned our industry, right? Like he talked about the housing market.
Activity in the housing sector has picked up somewhat, though it remains well below levels of a year ago, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates.
What he's probably pointing at when he says picked up somewhat, because we know that sales aren't actually doing that well, is that he's looking at the prices, right? So the fact that they're going up again has the Fed's attention. So we should kind of make a note of that for ourselves, right? That's one of the things that's going to keep potentially mortgage rates higher is if it's kind of a weird contradiction in that mortgage rates are keeping sales down, but as prices go up, sort of going to keep mortgage rates up even higher, right?
And yet the mortgage rates, the low inventory, the consumer mindset about buying a home right now versus the fact that everybody thinks they're going to keep their jobs and people are getting paid more money now due to inflation, they just seem to be offsetting each other.
Yeah,
We're not going anywhere.
I think there's just like a lot of uncertainty right now in general. People don't like to make big decisions when they don't feel confident in the future. And I think affordability is like a big factor. Like people are looking down at where they are, and even if they're making more money, they're looking at the house they have now versus the house they can get, given interest rates. And it's a real challenge.
What I'm taking away from this, Ruben, is that there's a lot going on in the economy and everyone's specific case is going to be different. And this time, unlike other times in the past, we just need to spend more of our energy and effort around understanding the financials behind what we're doing, why we're making the decision that we're making, and ensuring that those things align, because it's still a good time to buy a house if it's the right time for you and your financials are all in the right situation for the move. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Well, this has been super impactful and a lot of information. So you definitely want to go to the comments and to tell us what you need to know next time, because we'll be back again next month. In the description, you'll also find some links to go find out more about what the Federal Reserve said in their latest numbers. And hit subscribe because you don't want to miss us next month.